now bring in our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Rob, you saw those people there on your screens, potentially hundreds, potentially even more, who've come out to say goodbye to Alexei Navalny, knowing full well that their presence there could wind them up behind bars.
Yeah, I mean, it takes bravery to go out and do that, because we've seen over the last few days what happens when you even go and lay flowers at monuments to Navalny and to express any sort of regret at his death in that penal colony on the 16th of February. Hundreds were arrested just for doing that. People have been warned not to come out and attend the funeral, but they have, as you suggest, in the hundreds, possibly thousands, very hard to judge from the pictures that we're seeing. And despite an enormous police presence and security cameras everywhere, so that anybody who attends that funeral ceremony and the subsequent burial in the cemetery will be picked up on police cameras. They'll have a record of everybody who went along there. But people are absolutely determined to make sure that they were able to express their grief at the passing of Alexei Navalny. And they've done so, as you said again, in large numbers today.
We have elections in Russia in 2 weeks' time. Where does this leave Navalny's death? Where does it leave the opposition in Russia?
Well, in terms of the election, it leads absolutely nowhere. The opposition is completely crushed inside Russia now. Alexei Navalny was a lone voice. Even he would not have been able to have any impact on the election at all. He was imprisoned, had been for several years already. His support base had been crushed. Most of the key figures in his movement were in exile already. So, nothing is going to change in terms of how this election is going to play out. Vladimir Putin has done everything to ensure that there is absolutely no chance that he's going to lose the election. The one man who did seem to be offering some sort of resistance on a no-war platform was booted out of the election very, very early on. So, expect no surprises, I think is the short answer to what happens in the election.
Earlier this week, we had Yulia Navalnaya, the widow of Alexei Navalny, who spoke to EU lawmakers. And of course, she laid the blame on Navalny's death squarely at the Russian President Vladimir Putin. And she said that the European Union needs to be more innovative when it comes to taking on Putin. She said sanctions, they're not going to work. You need to think outside of the box. What does she mean?
Well, I think what she's saying, she accused the European Union's approach of being boring, of being the EU members of Parliament of being boring and not being innovative enough. I think what she was saying is, look, take a leaf out of my husband's notebook, approach it in a different way. Don't endlessly repeat the same resolutions, which have no effect at all. Don't come up with the same sanctions unless you're prepared to make sure that the sanctions bite. But think of other ways. Go after the money is what her essential message was, which is something that Alexei Navalny has been doing for many, many years. Going after what he calls the thieves in the Kremlin, the corrupt in the Kremlin, the people who supply the money to Vladimir Putin and his cronies around him. Where do they invest their money? Where have they got their money in the West? Go after those links. That seems to be her message.
Now, behind you, we're actually showing the images live there from the burial site. You can see it's an open casket there, Alexei Navalny. Yeah. Rob, we had Navalny's mother, who was given the runaround by prison authorities in actually getting her son's body back. Russian authorities didn't want his funeral to be public. Somehow the family has managed to get this funeral to make it public. Will this funeral service be broadcast on Russian television channels?
No. Absolutely not. People will see it because they have access to international television and also to YouTube. And Navalny's team has been broadcasting live on YouTube, although broadcasting is made difficult by poor internet access in the area around the church. But there's no doubt that the Russian authorities did not want this to take place. You're quite right. They did try to blackmail Lyudmila Navalnaya, his mother, into having a very small ceremony near to the penal colony in the Russian Arctic where he died. She fought them off on that. And the Russian authorities have given way on allowing, first of all, a funeral ceremony and then the burial in the Borisovskaya cemetery in southern Moscow to take place. I think in large part because, first of all, they're quite confident in their own power in Russia. They know that however many people turn out, it's not really going to knock President Putin's position inside the country. But secondly, too, because one of the claims of the present government in Russia is that it represents tradition, represents Russian culture in a constant battle against the degradations of the West. Alexei Navalny was converted to member of the Russian Orthodox Church. He wanted a Russian Orthodox Church burial, and it would have gone against the grain completely for the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, to have denied a member of the Russian Orthodox Church a proper Orthodox funeral in Russia.
But something that struck me is that members of his team said they had difficulty finding a place to hold the funeral service the minute the premises found out whose funeral it was.
Yeah, the petty harassment of the family simply never stopped.
But also, I think there's this fear, as you mentioned, of whichever priest had said this service.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of pressure being put on people, being put on churches, on funeral parlors. All of them felt the pressure, but of course, there is an element of self-censorship in this as well. People don't want to put themselves in a position where they could be threatened down the line by the authorities.
Rob, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for that. Rob Parsons there.